Natalie Wood, Hollywood icon, radiant on screen yet quietly burdened off it, captivated audiences with a smile that hid fear, longing, and relentless pressure. Robert Wagner, her husband, a star in his own right, shared the spotlight but also carried shadows of secrecy that would ripple through decades. Their lives seemed perfect, glamorous, scripted, yet behind the cameras, a fragile human story was unfolding. From a childhood in San Francisco shaped by immigrant parents, Natalie learned early the cost of perfection. Stardom arrived quickly, with unforgettable performances in Rebel Without a Cause and West Side Story. Yet the adoration of millions could not fill the void of normalcy, of safety, of love without scrutiny. Fame amplified her vulnerabilities, while marriage to Wagner blended romance with tension, trust with fear, intimacy with isolation. Then came that night in 1981, aboard the yacht Splendor near Catalina Island, where laughter, alcohol, and argument intersected with tragedy. Questions lingered for decades, answers hidden, truths distorted. How could a life so luminous end so abruptly, leaving a legacy both brilliant and haunted? Natalie Wood entered the world in San Francisco on a brisk summer day in 1938. The youngest of 3 children to Russian immigrant parents, her father, a garment worker, and her mother, a homemaker with dreams quietly deferred, carried the weight of survival in a new country. For Natalie, childhood was framed by both love and expectation, a delicate balance between adoration and the subtle pressure to excel. Her earliest memories were of applause, whether from teachers praising her in school plays or neighbors marveling at her poise. Even in these simple moments, the stage of life was already drawing her into a spotlight she could not escape, a light that would demand more than any child should bear. By the time she was 7, Natalie was attending Hollywood auditions, her small frame carrying both determination and a fragile vulnerability. Her parents supported her with quiet pride, yet the implicit message was clear: talent must be nurtured, polished, and presented perfectly. Each callback, each approval became a marker of worth. Rejection, even in small doses, left a sting that lingered long after the cameras were off. This combination of encouragement and pressure shaped a girl who craved love and admiration, yet who internalized doubt alongside every success. Her breakthrough came in 1955 with Rebel Without a Cause, a role that demanded both poise and emotional intensity. Natalie, still in her teens, held her own alongside James Dean, projecting a depth that belied her years. The film became an instant classic, and her performance secured her a place in Hollywood's constellation of rising stars. Yet with each accolade, the scrutiny intensified. Paparazzi photographs, magazine interviews, studio expectations, her life was no longer her own. Success brought applause, but it also magnified insecurities, a private struggle that she carried behind her radiant smile. 2 years later, West Side Story offered Natalie both challenge and triumph. She immersed herself in a role that required precision, stamina, and emotional honesty. Dance rehearsals drained her, singing demanded mastery, and the pressure to embody every nuance of Maria's innocence and passion was relentless. For Natalie, work was never simply work, it was a proving ground. A place where perfection was measured not only by the camera but by her own unyielding standards. Each scene completed, each note hit, each expression captured was a micro-victory, yet the personal toll remained hidden, a secret weight she bore silently. Through these early experiences, Natalie's public brilliance contrasted sharply with her private fragility. She developed a perfectionism that demanded excellence, not as a luxury, but as survival. She longed for stability, for love that could anchor her amid the chaos of a life in constant observation. Yet even as she achieved acclaim, applause, and professional recognition, she struggled with doubt, fear, and the quiet ache of a childhood still echoing in her adult heart. Her talent opened doors, but her vulnerabilities shaped the woman who would navigate Hollywood's pressures, relationships, and eventual marriage. Natalie's formative years reveal a young woman shaped by expectation and adoration, gifted yet fragile, polished yet privately uncertain. Her childhood laid the foundation for a lifelong quest to be loved, recognized, and understood beyond the roles she performed. The stage had given her success, but it had also demanded a resilience that would later intersect with the complexities of love and fame. How would this early perfectionism, this blend of brilliance and vulnerability, carry her into adult relationships and the marriage that would entwine her with both devotion and danger? Natalie Wood met Robert Wagner in the mid-1950s, a meeting that seemed destined to intertwine two luminous lives. Wagner, already a rising star in Hollywood, carried the confidence and charm of someone accustomed to attention, yet he too navigated the demands of public scrutiny. Their connection was immediate, magnetic, but beneath the surface, it carried a complexity that would define their years together. In 1957, they married, a young couple stepping into the glare of fame, pledging love amid cameras, contracts, and constant expectations. The vows they exchanged were private promises, yet every movement, every gesture, would inevitably be observed, analyzed, and immortalized. Hollywood, with its glamorous exterior, concealed relentless pressures. Natalie's career continued to flourish, each new role demanding perfection, while Wagner's projects pulled him in equally demanding directions. Balancing work and marriage became a delicate choreography, a daily negotiation between public appearances, film sets, and private desires. Even quiet moments at home carried an undercurrent of tension. The outside world intruded on intimacy, and the couple had to navigate a landscape where every smile, every argument, could be captured and transformed into gossip. Rumors swirled, fueled by tabloids, colleagues, and even well-meaning friends, eroding the simplicity of trust. Yet their marriage was not without tenderness. Romantic dinners, walks along the Hollywood Hills, whispered conversations in hotel rooms. These glimpses of normalcy provided warmth amid chaos. Still, the joy was often tempered by anxiety. Natalie, who had carried the weight of childhood expectations and early stardom, found her vulnerabilities magnified. Fame had a way of distorting love, turning affection into performance, concern into scrutiny. Even as she laughed, even as she embraced Wagner, there lingered a quiet unease, a fear that the world could intrude, that perfection was demanded not just on camera but in the very fabric of their relationship. Trust, the cornerstone of any marriage, faced constant tests. Wagner's charm and ambition contrasted with Natalie's meticulous nature and deep sensitivity. Differences that might have been small in private became amplified under the weight of fame. Misunderstandings grew quietly, tensions simmered, and secrets accumulated. Each trip, each premiere, each public appearance required negotiation, a careful balancing act between the desire for love and the demands of celebrity. The public saw glamour, laughter, and elegance, but behind the curtain, intimacy required vigilance, effort, and at times compromise that was never complete. These years together reveal a couple caught between devotion and external pressures, navigating love that was both profound and precarious. Their story was filled with moments of genuine connection, yet each was shadowed by the relentless demands of career, reputation, and public expectation. Romantic gestures were often overshadowed by the anxiety of exposure, by the secrets they kept, and by the constant push of Hollywood's spotlight against the fragile human hearts beneath. Fame had made their love visible, yet it had also complicated every touch, every word, every glance. Ultimately, Natalie and Wagner's marriage illustrates how fame can magnify vulnerabilities, blending love with control, joy with fear, and connection with isolation. Their story was a dance of closeness and distance, passion and restraint, intimacy and performance. It is within this tension that the fragility of Natalie's life becomes clear, a fragility intensified by fame and the pressures of sustaining both love and image. How did these pressures, The strain of intimacy and trust against the unforgiving glare of Hollywood manifest the night of her final tragedy. The night of November 29, 1981 began like many others in Hollywood: glamour, laughter, and the quiet hum of expectation. Natalie Wood, Robert Wagner, and Christopher Walken were aboard the yacht Splendor, anchored near Catalina Island. The evening was meant to be a brief escape, a private moment away from cameras, reporters, and the relentless scrutiny of the public. Yet beneath the laughter and clinking glasses, subtle tensions lingered, invisible to those who would later recount only fragments. The sea, calm yet vast, held the promise of freedom but also a quiet danger, an impartial witness to the events that would soon unfold. Witnesses recall Natalie's presence on the deck, a figure radiant in the soft yacht lights, yet carrying the weight of her own vulnerabilities. Alcohol had been consumed, as it often was during Hollywood evenings, and conversation swirled between humor and mild disagreement. It was a night framed by normalcy, a couple of friends seeking solace, sharing stories, and attempting respite from the pressures that defined their lives. Yet in those ordinary moments, tension accumulated quietly. The interplay of personality, circumstance and circumstance alone, created a delicate balance, one that would soon be broken. At some point during the evening, Natalie left the yacht, entering the water. Details remain confined to factual accounts. The yacht was anchored, the water was cold, and despite efforts, she did not return to the deck alive. Immediate reports indicated accidental drowning. The initial investigation documented the scene, interviewed those present, and noted the physical evidence. The coroner confirmed drowning as the cause of death, with alcohol contributing to her vulnerability. It was a tragedy defined by simplicity in cause, but complexity in context. A life ending abruptly amidst beauty, companionship, and the indifferent rhythm of the sea. The events of that night highlight the fragility that had accompanied Natalie throughout her life. Childhood pressures, professional demands, and personal vulnerabilities had followed her into adulthood, into marriage, and even into moments meant for solace. On the water, the mixture of joy, argument, and ordinary human imperfection intersected with an unforgiving environment, emphasizing how delicate life can be even for those accustomed to navigating scrutiny and expectation. Each detail, her presence on deck, the cool water, the attempt to return, reflects the intersection of human frailty and circumstance. What followed was a mixture of grief and procedural action. Friends and family were notified, authorities conducted interviews, and Hollywood absorbed the news with a mixture of shock and speculation. The tragedy became public almost immediately, though the full context remained opaque. The yacht, the island, and the night itself became symbols, reminders of a life lived in the spotlight, yet vulnerable to moments outside of it. Even decades later, the events of that night are discussed with reverence, not for mystery or rumor, but for the stark reminder that vulnerability can exist beneath brilliance, and that tragedy can strike quietly, without ceremony or warning. Natalie Wood's final hours reflect a convergence of human experience, desire for connection, exposure to environment, and the quiet accumulation of pressures carried for years. On the Splendor, ordinary moments became fatal. Alcohol, water, and circumstance combined with subtle tensions and lifelong vulnerabilities, resulting in a loss that echoed far beyond the yacht. The narrative of the night is not one of scandal, but of human fragility, a poignant reminder that even lives adored by millions remain susceptible to accident, and that the brightest stars carry shadows into every private moment. How could such a night, seemingly ordinary, ripple across decades of investigation, media scrutiny, and public fascination, leaving questions unanswered and grief unresolved? The investigation into Natalie Wood's death began almost immediately, but the process revealed how Hollywood glamour and media attention could obscure as much as they revealed. Authorities arrived on Catalina Island, documenting the yacht Splendor, interviewing Robert Wagner, Christopher Walken, and others present. Initial reports concluded accidental drowning, citing cold water, alcohol, and the inherent risks of being on a yacht at night. The coroner confirmed that she had drowned, a factual determination that should have provided closure. Yet for those who knew her, and for a public unwilling to relinquish hope or understanding, the answers felt incomplete. Media coverage erupted swiftly, magnifying grief and confusion. Headlines oscillated between solemnity and sensationalism, blending fact with implication, fact with conjecture, and leaving the public with fragments rather than clarity. Hollywood reporters dissected every detail, examining her relationship with Wagner, her career pressures, and the circumstances of the night, while offering little that illuminated the human truth of her final hours. Even in coverage meant to memorialize, the pressure of fame and the hunger for narrative overshadowed the intimacy of loss. Behind the headlines, Robert Wagner faced scrutiny and suspicion. Interviews were conducted, statements recorded, and every word was analyzed. Friends and family watched as the private dimensions of their grief became public discourse. Yet the factual record remained clear: Natalie Wood drowned, and alcohol contributed to her vulnerability. There were no confirmed foul play accusations. The events unfolded in a manner consistent with accident. Still, the emotional reality for those left behind, Wagner, Walken, and close family, was complicated, filled with sorrow, unanswered questions, and a profound sense of absence. The investigation also revealed how Hollywood structures could impede straightforward answers. The studio system, contracts, and image management sometimes dictated what could be released or emphasized. Public fascination intersected with professional obligation, and every statement, every report, was filtered through layers of celebrity expectation. Even those charged with uncovering truth had to navigate a landscape shaped as much by optics as by fact. For Natalie, a life lived under constant observation, this became another layer of irony. In seeking to honor her life and determine what happened, the world imposed new pressures on those closest to her. Despite decades passing, inconsistencies in retelling emerged, not in the facts of her death, but in the emphasis, the framing, and the narrative imposed by others. Witness accounts, police logs, and coroner reports painted a clear picture: accidental drowning, alcohol involvement, environmental hazards of a yacht at night. Yet the emotional weight, the grief, and the human intimacy of the loss were often submerged beneath speculation, media cycles, and Hollywood's relentless appetite for story. Family and friends carried the truth quietly, navigating mourning in parallel with public scrutiny. Ultimately, the investigation and media storm illuminate the tension between human tragedy and public fascination. A young woman, vibrant and adored, was lost to the water, leaving behind a career, a family, and a husband whose life would forever bear the weight of that night. The facts were simple. The human context was profound. Hollywood's glare and the media's hunger could not erase the private sorrow, yet they complicated the path to understanding. Natalie's death became both a public event and an intensely personal loss, emblematic of the fragility that shadows even the brightest lives. How could decades of reporting, investigation, and renewed interest finally bring clarity to a tragedy that remained emotionally raw, leaving only echoes of grief and the enduring mystery of a star lost too soon? When a life ends suddenly, the world does not stop. Yet for those closest to Natalie Wood, November 29, 1981, became a date that halted the rhythm of their lives in an instant. News of her death rippled across Hollywood and far beyond it, carried by headlines that sounded impossible for a woman who had been famous for her vitality, her expressive eyes, and her unmistakable presence. She had been a child star who grew into an actress of remarkable emotional depth, a mother of 2 daughters she adored, and a woman who moved through fame with both grace and vulnerability. Her passing left a silence in the entertainment world that felt far larger than one single life could explain. In the early aftermath, the official ruling of accidental drowning shaped how the public understood her death, Tributes from colleagues spoke of her sensitivity, her intelligence, and her tireless dedication to her craft. Family members, still reeling from grief, did their best to protect her daughters from the relentless glare of public mourning. The world grieved a beloved actress, while her family grieved Natalie, the person, not the icon. For decades after, the story remained largely unchanged. Films she had starred in resurfaced on television, allowing viewers to see her again in roles that had defined eras of American cinema: Rebel Without a Cause, Splendor in the Grass, West Side Story. Each performance felt like a reminder of her layered emotional world, one that audiences had connected with across generations. And yet, as time passed, questions about the circumstances of her death quietly lingered. Dillais et Fredetta, Sinuerzetta. They were not accusations, not theories, just unanswered details that seemed permanently suspended in the background. Then, in 2011, silence gave way to renewed scrutiny. Captain Dennis Davern publicly stated that he had not shared every detail with investigators in 1981. His revised account triggered a reopening of the case, an administrative act, yet one that reignited public curiosity and reopened old wounds for the family. Authorities emphasized that the purpose was to reassess, not accuse. Still, the decision brought Natalie's name back into headlines, reminding the world of a tragedy that had never been fully resolved. The following year, in 2012, the coroner amended the cause of death to drowning and other undetermined factors. The change did not declare foul play. It did not identify wrongdoing. It only acknowledged that new details, additional bruises, the absence of preserved evidence, the natural decay of memory, introduced a margin of uncertainty. That uncertainty was not an indictment. It was a reflection of the limitations faced by investigators decades after the event. Public statements from law enforcement consistently reaffirmed the same essential point: there was no conclusive evidence to classify her death as a homicide. The case remained open for additional information, but without definitive proof of a crime, it existed in a space between clarity and mystery, painful, unresolved, yet firmly grounded in documented facts. Through all of this, Natalie's legacy evolved beyond the circumstances of her passing. Her daughters grew into adulthood, carrying both the love and the loss of a mother whose fame had once lit up movie screens around the world. Hollywood continued to honor her as a performer who brought emotional truth to every role she took on. And the public, generation after generation, returned to her films not out of morbid fascination, but out of admiration for a woman who worked tirelessly to be seen not just as a star, but as a human being. In the end, the investigations, revisions, and lingering uncertainties form only one chapter of Natalie Wood's story. What remains larger, more enduring, and more deeply felt is the life she lived, the artistry she offered, the love she gave, and the fragile humanity she carried so openly through a world that demanded perfection. And so we're left with a final quiet wondering, how do we honor a legacy shaped by brilliance when the final moments remain forever incomplete? Natalie Wood's life unfolded like a ribbon of light across American cinema, each role capturing a tenderness that felt impossibly rare. Yet behind the glow she carried the fragile truth of a woman shaped by early pressure, lifted by talent, and haunted by vulnerability. Her death, still marked by unanswered questions, reminds us that fame never protects a person from human fear or longing. It only magnifies what they hope to hide. In remembering her, it becomes clear that the story of Natalie Wood is not defined by a single night off Catalina Island. It is defined by a lifetime of grace, discipline, and emotional honesty. Her daughters, her films, and the generations who still feel moved by her performances carry her forward with a love that cannot be dimmed by uncertainty. Hollywood lost a star, but the world lost a woman who gave everything she had, even when the cost was heavy. And perhaps that is why her legacy still lingers, soft as a memory we refuse to release. For more emotional stories, check out this video.